Do it.
All right. Got 6:30. Gonna call the March 19th, 2025 Augusta Charter Township Regular Planning Commission to order. And we'll start with Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll start with roll call. Albers,
Here.
Animal,
Here she is.
all absent. Gifford. Here. Spence. Here. Witt.
Not here.
Wolf. Absent. Here. Move on to item 4, approval of the agenda. Are there any changes, additions to the agenda?
I have some suggestions and up for discussion if you want to add. This is the approval for this agenda. Can I make a motion to add? Is this where I do this?
Yeah.
Okay. Creo, that could be a conversation. I just know, I wanted to get feedback from Commissioner Gifford around if there was any board response to the board's position on pursuing a Creo. So there's that. I didn't know if we were going to talk about the non-conforming email that you sent. I had some questions around that.
Not necessarily, but we can. I just distributed the information so that everybody had it all. Those who are in attendance got it, but so that everybody else had it.
So I watched the tape and I just had a couple questions about, in talking about it. The solar ordinance, I know that was covered off. I guess not to deep dive into that, I just had some comments around what was discussed last month. Zoning, I know that kind of ties in and might just not be a needed added item, but I know we're going to talk about zoning with the mother-in-law or the housing readiness audit. And then I know like our topic today about the housing readiness audit.
Yeah. Okay, so what, you want to add a discussion for Creo?
Yeah,
Discussion?
yeah.
All right.
Unless it just could be a question answer. I just wanted to know where we stand
That's
with
fine.
that.
Was there something else specific in the other items you wanted to add?
The non-conforming, I think that maybe we were talking about the junkyard in Willis as an example. And I guess my question was more towards Laura, and I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
Joe.
What was your last name?
Pizzotti.
Zoe, okay. On if you had had a chance, Laura, to research, because I know the question kind of ended with what percentage of it was burned and.
John, I think, spoke with Keith about that.
Yeah.
We can update the.
Okay. Solar ordinance, it just had a couple of comments to make. If, depending on what the board decides to do, whether they kick it back to us, whether the attorney has questions, it might be nice if it does come back to us to add some language in there about for any future projects, soil testing before and after a project is implemented.
Well, okay. So if you want to add that as an agenda item, we can do that in the discussion.
Okay. The master plan was really around zoning in an agricultural district. I know in a previous board meeting, I think the land preservation kind of backed off on having ag districts, but I'm wondering if there are some large parcels of land that farmers are working that might be interested in having their farms designated into an agricultural district. I don't know if the farmland preservation, if adding them into, I don't know what, is it an easement or just into the preservation, if that is enough, or it just seems like we've got a flag that's a barn and a silo and we have we have no ag
All right,
districts.
well, we can add that as an item.
Okay.
All right, is there anything else?
No, just regular, I had a conversation, or comments to make about what we're gonna discuss tonight, so I guess it's something to be added.
Okay. So then we'll add item 7B, which is a Creo discussion. Item 7C is discussion on the solar ordinance. Item 7D is discussion on non-conforming uses. And item E is discussion related to agricultural districts.
My intent isn't to keep us here until 10 o'clock, trust me.
Are there any other changes or amendments? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
I'll to make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Motion by Spence, is there support?
Support.
Supported by Gipfert. Albers,
Yes,
Gipfert,
Yes.
Spence,
Yes.
Witt,
Yes.
York, yes, motion carries unanimously. Move on to approval of the minutes from the February 19th meeting. Are there any changes, additions, corrections? Anything? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Spence to approve, is there support?
Support.
We have support by Commissioner Witt. Albers,
yes,
Gifford,
Yes.
Spence,
Yes.
Witt,
Yes.
York, yes, motion carries unanimously. All right, move on to item 7A, the housing readiness audit discussion.
So last month, we talked about specifically accessory dwelling units. This month, I added to that information, so you still have your accessory dwelling unit information in the packet. But I added additional information regarding senior assisted and independent living facilities, convalescent centers. Currently, convalescent center is defined in your ordinance, but it's not listed as a permitted or conditional use, special land use in any of the districts. And we also talked about adding provisions for senior assisted and independent living in varying zoning districts, just to accommodate another type of housing to help provide some variation in our housing stock. And on the last page, and we can go through each of these, I provided revisions to the schedule of regulations and in which districts we would consider accessory dwelling units, senior assisted independent living, or convalescent centers in the various, whether they're permitted or conditional. And of course, that's all, up for discussion, all stuff for discussion. The other provision that I modified is related to the existing provisions in the PUD section of the ordinance. Section 12.4B has a provision that talks about optional provisions for exemplary projects. And when we have a multiple family component, currently we allow up to 20% of the housing units within a PUD of 20 acres or more to be, a single family development could be multifamily. And just for discussion purposes, we could increase that, that percentage for an exemplary project when they meet all the criteria in that portion of the ordinance. And I just put 50% just as a talking point. So I'm happy to go through the sections one by one if you'd like to do that, and we can talk about. Start with senior and assisted and independent living. These provisions would be allowed as permitted uses in the multiple family zoning districts. as a special land use in the village mixed use and the village residential zoning districts.
Wait, so you're saying within Whitaker and Willis is where these,
Saying those, yeah, in those zoning districts, yeah.
is where the focus of this
Well,
dwelling units would be?
it would be where multifamily is currently allowed, yeah. Or in the village mixed use areas.
Oh, and or. Okay.
And or, yep. These provisions allow for a maximum density. So if you were to develop, 2-bedroom facility, you have to have 2,500 square feet, and that's the land area you would need for each unit. So if you had 2.5 acres, you could have 10 2-bedroom units, essentially. And of course, most of these developments have a mixture of efficiency, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, et cetera. Just to give you an idea of the size area that you would need for this type of facility. We also would have specific height, lot coverage, and setbacks. They would be set forth in the MR multiple family district, just because this is most similar to that. Parking wouldn't be allowed in a front yard, but it would be permitted in side or rear yards. And we would require a 20-foot setback from parking. For facades, we would require that the maximum length of an uninterrupted building facade facing a public street or residentially zoned property shall be 30 feet, which allows for articulation, so you're not looking at a flat, straight wall along public roads or adjacent residential structures. And then typically these types of developments have a separate drop-off and pickup area, because if it's independent, or if it's assisted living, you know, a lot of those folks don't have cars, and then they also need a lot more ambulatory care in some instances, and so to have a dedicated canopy for enter and exit, we want to make sure that there's adequate space for ambulatory, but also for independent living could be separate from those areas. So that was independent living. This is just food for thought, right? I just want to give you some ideas of things you might want to think about. And then the convalescent center, that is separate. That's like what I grew up calling a nursing home, which is not what we now call a convalescent center, right? Which could have assisted and independent living with it. It could have a memory care unit. It could have typically there's additional medical care that's provided as part of a convalescent center. And the same thing, there's a site area requirement. You have to have a minimum site area for each bed. For ingress and egress to the site, at least one property line shall be on a public paved road. All yards shall be a minimum of 50 feet in width, and you can't have parking in the required setbacks. Delivery, loading, and service parking areas will be screened. Again, that facade at 30 feet, so that you have our facade articulation and don't have to look at a 200 linear foot flat wall. And then we would allow that these types of facilities have multi-purpose rec rooms, medical examination rooms, beauty parlors, all of those ancillary type uses that the residents would use, because they don't leave in a lot of cases. And those convalescent centers would be listed specifically as special land uses in the multifamily and in the village mixed use districts.
If the township residents decided that they wanted something like this, is there a limit on the number? Because, like, are we saying we could have multiple? Would just be one per township? Is it based on, I mean, we've got a township of roughly a little over 7,000 people. So-
No, this is a use that would be allowed in the zoning ordinance, and if two came along that wanted to develop here, there's no limit. If the community can, if they can get approved through special land use in their site plan and they meet all the criteria, there's no. Did anybody have any questions on any of those?
I guess I'm just a little confused as to how we got here, because in like the end of last year, this grant and what we were being asked to consider was mother-in-law suites and separate building structures in people's homes to accommodate either a parent that was no longer capable of living on their own, or I know it was brought up last month, was like family member that needed help. I'm not sure how we got to a place of adding convalescent centers, nursing homes, and I mean, this is just my opinion. I mean, I think if we did anything, I would want some sort of vote to go before the community, because this would dramatically change the land uses in our township. I personally don't think we have the infrastructure, nor are we close enough to, I mean, it depends on where you go. Like, I guess if you put something out